Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Artist Emancipation Podcast. I have a super freaking exciting episode today because I brought on my family member. This is Lauren Kuhne. She is my cousin. She is one of the most creative people that I know. And I say that because it runs in our family and we're just the best. So
we are.
Yeah, right. So she is a singer-songwriter. Beautiful artwork coming from her, and she does solo work, but she also is in a band called Lauren and the Homewreckers, which I love. So Lauren, tell us a little about you, how you got to what you're doing now, and just the background of your artistic journey.
Sure. So, first of all, it's going to be a miracle if you and I get through this without cracking up every step of the way.
I know.
But I'm so excited to just be chatting about this with you. It's really, I was thinking about this before we hopped on here. I really just followed a feeling, and I know that's kind of a lame, very generic answer. But there's always been a kind of a gut feeling in me to follow this. As a kid, I never really dreamed of being a musician. I mean, I guess every kid dreams of being a rock star or whatever.
Right.
But I definitely was the shy kid, definitely was the quiet kid, as you know,
Yes.
and never really saw myself performing or, being on stage or maybe anything really like that. But it kind of just evolved over time. I was really searching a lot in my teen years. Definitely a lot of searching going on as a closeted gay kid. That'll be a lot to swirl around in your head and make you start thinking about things and what you're going to do with that and what you're going to do with all those feelings.
Right.
At the time, I thought the answer was going to church, as some people do. And I kind of followed this feeling of this general idea happening of music and being called more to that. Picking up guitar, starting to sing along to the radio. I never really had vocal lessons or really. I had a couple of guitar lessons like when I first started out, but I lost interest for a couple years and then I'd pick it up again.
Yeah.
And it really became an escape just to get better at something, to get my mind off of teenage things at the time, and just found myself being more and more drawn to it. So I eventually became a worship leader through the churches that I was a member of. And that was really cool for a while. It was actually my first experience playing with more people and a band and kind of getting organized in that way. But as you can probably tell where the story goes, I was starting to justify, two different worlds at the time that I was kind of living in, and essentially came out, and that didn't work with the particular denomination of church that I was part of.
Right.
And we can go, I could talk for an hour about this, but there was just this, it was an extremely traumatic experience. I'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
There was this feeling of being discredited automatically, just because there was one facet of me that didn't line up with, kind of the code of how you needed to live in order to be a worship leader, I guess, at the time. I just felt disqualified immediately. And I put music down for a couple years, actually. And it wasn't until I moved away, and I was, again, just reeling from some of the fallout of this situation. But there was a point in time, again, that gut feeling said, what do I do with all of this? And if I'm discredited in this realm, I really want to create my own expression and create my own worship in a way. So really held on to that spiritual side of me. And songwriting became more of my spiritual and emotional expression.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say you put down the guitar actually after that all happened. Because one of the things I talk about the most is like how we actually express our creativity and how we express what we do. You're a singer-songwriter, but what goes behind that, right? And like you're saying, like this emotion was so strong that you had to put down the guitar and process it. And that's a huge part of learning. Like, so even though you may have been in that time, you're like, I'm not doing this fucking guitar anymore. Fuck you guys. You're still like creating in your brain. It's just a different process of it, right? So what made you pick it back up when you were, healing from this? What made you want to express that emotion to everybody else?
I'll say that this has happened in a lot of cycles as well. And that's something that I've learned over time is that it's always going to be there. And I think the first time I picked it back up was really just a bubbling over of feelings, and not having been to therapy yet in an organized way. This is my early 20s at this point. So really there was like no other format or choice of how to get these feelings down or out of my brain or express them. So it was a natural bubbling over, I guess, of just hitting a breaking point and, doing something about it.
Yeah.
But over time, as I've put it down again for different reasons, life happens, different phases of life or modes or, just whatever state you're in, it just depends. But I used to beat myself up for that, for putting it down. And I've realized over time, we'll probably get more into this as we go, but I'm very much like a hybrid songwriter. Like I'm not forcing myself to do it every day. I do it when I want to. It's something I love and I kind of want to keep it like that. But with that, there's constant cycle of picking it back up and putting it down.
That's such like an integral part of being a true artist though, because you're not forcing things to happen. Like it's when people sit down and they're like, I have to create something today. It's not for myself. It's for other people. Like they don't say that to themselves, but that's what's happening, right? So like the fact that you can be aware of the fact you're sitting down to process for yourself and to create for yourself. Like artistry is the most selfish thing. I like to tell people that all the time. Like if you're creating truly to make yourself happy, people are going to relate with that 10 times more than if you were trying to create something for them,
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that.
All right. So I feel like I need to give the listeners a little background on us because as she's telling this story, it's so much more background that I saw with her and just her like coming into this whole new person. So as we were growing up, we're the same age. We're about a month apart.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. And then our older siblings are very close in age too. And it's funny because the dynamics were like me and Lauren were very similar. We were very shy growing up. We were very creative little kid. We were like a little weird kids. Lauren wasn't weird. She was very popular. I was the fucking weirdo.
I was closeted weird then. I think I glided through with sports. I don't know. That kind of covered it for me.
Yeah, you held it together. I just like fucking could not keep it together. It's fine. But we had this very similar family dynamic to where we understood each other without like really telling each other. And we had these older siblings who were very personable, very outgoing, very much took the limelight in every situation. And that's not a bad thing. Like they're both wonderful human beings. But we often sat in the background and processed things, witnessed things, and just, we weren't the show goers, right? Like we weren't the main attraction, so to speak. And it's so funny now to see Lauren up on a stage, like fucking killing it. And just this like exuberance of confidence. I can't even explain it, but it's so funny because, and here I am on a podcast interviewing people. Like it's a complete 180 of where we were as children. But I really think that because we were so introverted and introspective at that time, we know how to process these emotions and to get them out in a safe way.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't possibly say it better. And I know that there are different artists that maybe it came more naturally to, like they were born a performer. One of my best friends locally here is Shawna Daniels in the Philadelphia area. And she just, you look at baby photos of her and she's like already like doing jazz hands, and she just was like designed to be a performer, and just through in and throughout. But it's just amazing how it's different for other people, and for the quiet kids sometimes that can kind of take all of that in and alchemize it and kind of channel it into a different form of expression.
Right. And it is interesting because I've met Shug once or twice. I think
yeah.
twice now. And she's just an extroverted human being and very outgoing. And it's interesting though, because you two collaborate a lot, right? So it's like you have this one side who's very, I wouldn't even say you guys are that different. She's very extroverted. I think you're an extrovert too. Like you've really come into yourself and are confident in yourself over the last few years, but you have different vibes, so to speak. So how do you find it like collaborating with somebody who's a little bit different than you? Do you find it to be a benefit? Like what's the deal there?
Yeah. So we've collaborated a lot in the past. And actually it's been kind of a pause for both of us, but we really have learned a lot from each other. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you say we're very similar at our core. I don't know how we got on the topic, but at one point, like we discovered we were both the same Myers-Briggs personality type. And like, I'm constantly, every time I take it, I get INFJ, and it's like, you're the rarest personality. And like, I never met anybody else that like was that type. And
really,
like one day it came up and we were like, oh my gosh, like we're both INFJs.
I love that.
I actually knocked over my beer at the time. It was like, it's a moment.
Like, say what?
This is such a klutz. But it was cool because yes, on our outsides were very different in the way that we perform or express. But at our core, we're these really introspective kids. And she actually says that she's an introvert at heart as well. So it's really kind of this, I guess, mode that introverts have to, they not necessarily have to, but if you want to, kind of put on your extrovert mode and go perform, and then take 24 hours to recharge after that.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, it's been great to learn from her though. She's got such a business mindset as well as her artistry. I actually came on board as her manager for 2 years. Yeah. I'm really curious, exploring the music industry, like the business side of things. So great learning process as well. And watching her, what she said yes to, what she said no to. She's very direct in what she's choosing. So as an artist myself, it was kind of cool getting to witness somebody on such a personal level, who's a little further ahead, in the performance realm. And she's been doing music full time for over a decade. She's crushing it. So when you start to network and make friends and really connect at that level, you really can accelerate your learning. And that's either from fellow artists, songwriters, or musicians, can better your playing. When I joined the band, or formed a band, I should say, just playing with other people or working with other people just will elevate your skills pretty much in every single way possible if you click with them.
Right. Don't work with people that you hate. Just FYI. Right.
Well, I only like a few people.
This is true. We are very picky about who is in our inner circle, right? So take us back to before you formed your band. As we're talking about collaboration and working with people who you enjoy, what did you look for in other people before bringing them into such a close collaboration?
Again, it was kind of a happy accident. I think it's more like if you believe in manifestation, I think it was, following that feeling again. I went to my first songwriting retreat. It was like a life-changing experience. I came home. I ended a 6-year relationship. Changed a lot of things around after that. So
remember this, yes.
That was crazy. But I feel like that was a pivot point in my life where I was really kind of cracked open. And I actually put it out there on Facebook. I had some musician friends. Usually on Facebook, I'll connect with other musicians, like it's a way of networking. But I put it out there like, hey, I want to form a band. Is anybody interested? And I had James reach out first, my lead guitarist, and he actually works at Chase, just like I do. So that's actually how we were connected at first. And really, Barrett, I had known from the music scene for a while. At the time, he was in like 3 different bands, so I didn't really think he'd be available or have time. So I actually worked with a couple other drummers for a little bit, and it just didn't necessarily click, or schedules didn't work out. But Barrett and I have always had a connection from the get-go. He's one of the most charismatic drummers you'll ever watch if you see a live performance of him. He's just a fun dude. He's basically like a golden retriever that plays drum. So that it just was like things are meant to be, and they kind of fell into place step by step. And I saw Trinka at the Ladybug Festival. She was playing bass in this kind of compiled band for the headliner that year, and they played like all these soulful covers, and it was just really amazing. And it turns out that she was just kind of starting out at the time, and she wanted to expand into different genres and folk. And really, I was working for that festival at the time, so I was able to reach out and be like, hey, are you interested? So it's really kind of putting yourself out there, and not necessarily settling at first if something isn't clicking, or just rolling with the flow if something doesn't work out. But the right people will come together, like if you just keep taking those baby steps. So
absolutely. I feel like that's a whole artist life, is just like take the baby step and see what happens, and then do it again and over and over. I love it.
A lot of trust the process moments for sure.
And it's funny that you say, like, you're like, Shawna, I didn't really have a plan. I just kind of did it. And I'm like, I get that. I relate to that, because that's majority of my life as well.
So. Yeah, it's kind of like the next best thing. Like, you can set a point, but you take steps towards it. It could change over time. Like, nothing has turned out exactly how I envisioned it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I got in the general area.
Right, it turns out better whenever you try to do something. You know what I mean? Like, it either doesn't work out for a good reason, because it's not where you were meant to be, or it just works out because it's where you're meant to be.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny as you're saying that, I just glanced down at my clock, and when you're saying like where you're meant to be and like doesn't work out, like this is a little bit of a pivot, but it's 2:22 right now as we're recording it. And like my spiritual side, I've always kind of had these little nudges of like these like little signs and everything, but 222 has been my number that has like resurfaced to me over and over and over in my life. And now you start hearing like more celebrities talking about angel numbers, or like Taylor Swift with, I think it's 13 is her number.
Yeah.
So there, I don't know, you call it what you want, but I choose to believe in a little bit of that magic too, that the universe is kind of nudging us along the way. But we have much more control over it, I think, than we think. But there are some guideposts along the way. So
yeah,
little fun fact there.
Little fun fact about Lauren. We love it. But we're always on the same page. Like whenever we get together with our family, like me and Lauren have to have a bedroom together that night so we can catch up on our lives. Like it's just, we have a great connection when it comes to, just always being there for each other and sharing the same interests. Like the 222, like she knows all about my psychic friends. She knows everything about my life. So it's like, again, even if you weren't my cousin, I would love it because you're an artist and you're creative and you're putting yourself out there as somebody who's willing to put in the work to become who they need to be, right? Yeah. So it's amazing. I want to talk to you a little bit more about your journey to becoming, this rock star on stage, basically. Because when I talk to a lot of artists, the consensus is that we all struggle with imposter syndrome. We all struggle with burnout. So there had to be some of that come up when you're stepping onto stage for the first time. So how did you get through that mentally and physically, just being on stage for the first couple times?
It's terrifying. I would say, I kind of had training wheels on when I was first starting to play through the church because nobody can really actually say if you suck. They might say it politely to your face or behind your back or whatever. But that was a good actual like training into playing in front of people.
Yeah.
But the first time I went to an open mic at a little bar, it was a little like pizza place. It was downstairs from my apartment, and saw like a 8x10 little like printed out Microsoft Word art sign, like something like that there's an open mic. So I went. I had my eyes closed the entire time. I played, I think we got 2 songs or something. I feel like I didn't breathe the entire duration of this 8 minutes or so.
Love it.
But it just was, again, it's like a muscle memory. It's something that gets easier and easier. And, I actually had, at the time, the founder of the Ladybug Festival, or one of them, there's 2 co-founders to that. He came up to me afterwards and handed me a card, and he was like, "Hey, you sound really good, blah, blah, blah." So like a little bit of validation goes such a long way, or like there's a little bit of connection that happens. And music's really tricky. Sometimes you'll play to a room and it's just dead, or it's just, it's the worst feeling in the world. If it's like an empty room, or like nobody really cares, or there are different types of gigs and shows too, but it's really a high-low experience. Like you have some of these performances that just, you have a bunch of people in the room and it's like the perfect listening room. Some like people come up to you afterwards and say different things that resonated. And other times it's just like, oh, like, why am I doing this? But you talk about imposter syndrome and kind of what you were talking about before of like, we are really deep. Like you and I, like we're those types of people. And I noticed that we're surrounding ourselves more, like we're finding more and more of those sort of people with a lot of depth, and maybe we're highly sensitive, we're highly emotional, whatever you want to call it. But I think growing more into myself, I've realized that not everybody is like that, but there are enough of us around to connect with each other. And I think that's helped me through my imposter syndrome a lot. But I still have that all the time. It took me a long time to accept the musician label, to accept myself as a songwriter, to like call myself those things. And it's again different for everybody, but part of that was the fact that I chose the route where I'm doing music full time. I'd be an anxious mess. I would end up hating it. I don't think I'm wired in that way to crank out that much material or that much work
Truly.
at a time. And some of my friends are going the full artist route, crushing it. But I'm watching them and it's tough. It's a rough road. So I've experienced imposter syndrome a lot of choosing the route of balancing with a day job and being an artist at the same time. But more and more of that is definitely the route that works for me and gives me enough creative energy and flow to create in more pockets rather than full time. So yeah, I'd say imposter syndrome is one of the worst things I've had to like push through, and it's never going to stop. But I've just gotten better at maybe quieting that voice over time.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you brought up that you're just surrounding yourself with more people who are like-minded and have the same depth of emotion that you do. I like to think that because I do consider it a gift to be highly sensitive, because you're able to create the work that you do. And as you're listening to this, listeners, like, go check out Lauren's albums, because the lyrics are incredible. The music is incredible, but you can feel the emotion in it. And that's why I love to support you in any way possible, because it's just so powerful what you're doing. But
thanks, cuz.
Of course. But like these types of creative people, they need to realize that we are put on this earth for a reason. And it's maybe to help those people who don't feel these emotions to understand that some people do, and some people, it takes a long time to process this stuff for us, right? Because again, me and Lauren are like basically the same person. we're creative. We process things. I know I do anyways. Like it takes me a while to understand things when they hurt me or when I get traumatized by something. Like it takes me a minute, right? So when we fully process that stuff, we're able to share it with the world in a way that they can see it and they can understand it. So I think what you do is really beautiful. And for God's sakes, don't ever stop doing it, even if it's on your own time and works for you, because it's so beautiful and it's so powerful. And I don't think you need to do it full time in order to be as effective as you are.
Thanks, cuz this is great. Why don't we do
I
this
almost
every day?
cried saying that. But like, oh my God, that brings up a question I didn't send to you. But so because you're highly sensitive and emotional and like your music is so powerful, how do you keep your shit together on stage? I wondered this.
Yeah, I'm gonna elaborate first on what you were just talking about of being
Yes.
a highly emotional person in a world that typically looks at it like you're a fucking mess, like get your shit together. And there are certain contexts where, you know, I look back at my life and I'm like, oh, like I wish I could have handled my emotions better at that point, or you know, or realized that I was a really emotional person and it really wasn't until recently that I actually like accepted that about myself. So it's really a blessing and a curse, but it's definitely a gift to be able to experience such a range of emotion and then have the realization that you can turn them into something and you can click with people and you have a special gift and a calling that you're trying to channel and give back to the world. So that's good stuff. Like once you get to that point, you sort through the emotions enough. And learning self-regulation has been really, really helpful. Therapy, definitely highly recommend for highly emotional people. I actually think everyone should go to therapy, like almost like an annual physical. I think that would improve our world so much. But again, another topic for another day. But bringing that on stage, there were a couple of times it became overwhelming for me. I have cried on stage once or twice, especially in like those intimate singer-songwriter sessions. And it was more so when I had just written a new song and like played it for the first time. Sometimes that emotion was still really raw. And I definitely, part of me regrets that, or is like, you know, maybe I should have waited, or, but it resonated with people. People
You know what? That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it was a beautiful thing, I think. But it's definitely been more rare moments. But yeah, it's been more pushing through nerves. As an introvert, I have to psych myself up a lot. It takes a lot of energy for me to like go and perform for 45 minutes to an hour. But once you're up there, it's so energizing at the same time. It's really hard to explain. And my mind could either be on like locking in with the band, like, you know, locking in on technical things. My mind could be on, oh, I wonder what I'm having for dinner at the bar. Or my heart could just be like, oh my God, this is the most alive feeling I've ever felt. Like, and when you tap into that most alive feeling, like that's the moment where it's like, this is why I do this. This is why this labor of love, like organizing the band, practicing, being vulnerable, being terrified, putting all of your emotions and feelings out there for the world. Booking the show, working with the venue, schlepping all your gear there, having sound issues or like fixing technical issues right before the show. Like it can be very stressful, and it really is a labor of love, especially live performances. But when you click into that feeling, or you feel a synergy with your band as well, like those are the two, that feeling alive and that synergy with other people that you can achieve is why I do it and why I keep pushing through all of those things.
Yes.
To hold it together on stage.
I love it. It's just so rewarding because you have to go through all that stuff, right? Like, and then the fact that you brought up vulnerability, I think that's such a huge thing, especially for people like us who are highly emotional and highly sensitive. vulnerability is the fucking hardest thing in the world for us because we have a lot of emotion and sometimes it's terrifying to show it. And then to get up and sing songs that you've written about it, like that's the ballsiest shit in the world. So I commend you. I commend you, Lauren, on all of your fucking beautiful work because it is truly like, if I were to see you cry on stage, I'd start crying too because it'd be such a beautiful moment. So 100% agree with you there. Now, we are getting to the end of the podcast, but I still want to talk to you a little bit about your own work. So as you look back through, how many albums do you have now?
So I did one little EP in my early 20s, and it was just 3 songs and kind of like was learning the recording process. But I released a full album in 2022, and that's my baby.
That's my baby.
And it's a collection of songs over like a decade's worth of time, like pretty much spanning my 20s. That all kind of went into that album. So I'm looking forward to writing new stuff with a new perspective and some growth and just some different topics other than chasing people and like just it's 20s stuff.
Yes. But on that album, is there a song in particular that you are most proud of, or even just like a theory on the album that you're most proud of?
Yeah, so I'd say 2 things come to mind. The title of the album itself is Logic Doesn't Sing. And that's a verse in one of the first songs, or a line in one of the first songs, Anchor. And it just, Logic Doesn't Sing just is like a phrase that sums me up so well because I have this business technical mind, and then I have this like creative, emotional ocean on the other side of my brain. And it just, on paper, it just didn't necessarily make sense that I would be a songwriter and performing. But it's just, logic doesn't sing. Like it's different things, but it can exist at the same time. And my favorite song on the album is Anchor Part 2. So there's an Anchor 1, and it's about chasing this girl. This was the 6-year relationship. And, really evolving over time about what a long-term relationship looks like, how much growth you can achieve through being in a relationship with each other, but also learning that you're codependent as fuck. You're trying to save people. So all these things happened to me through that relationship, and there were a lot of lessons, and like we're on great terms now. But it just was such a learning experience, and that first bookend of Anchor Part 1 completely changed to Anchor Part 2 that kind of summed up the end of the relationship. But the arrangement that the band put on it is just exactly how I wanted it. Like it's almost exactly how I wanted to hear it, and it happened. I can't listen to a lot of my music on repeat. It's really difficult, actually. But that one, when it comes on shuffle, I will listen to it. There's a rawness to it that there's something about it that just clicked with me, and I'm really proud of that one. So Anchor Part 2, let that be the first song you listen to.
Listen, everybody. Right now.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
I love it. I love that album, for the record. It's one of my favorite things to listen to when I'm feeling some type of way. But I know there's going to be a lot of people who are looking up to you in the position that you're in as somebody who has, went through all the struggles. You've conquered the fear of getting on stage. So to that person who is sitting in their bedroom writing music and too scared to be vulnerable enough to share it with people, what is your advice to them?
Yeah, I would say don't beat yourself up over little stuff. Like if you're not progressing as quickly as you want to, try not to get in your own way of being critical of yourself. I spent a lot of time doing that, and it didn't necessarily help me along at all. And don't be afraid if you have other gifts too. Like if you need to get a different job to like supplement your artistry, like try not to shame yourself for that. I've had a lot of conflicting feelings about that over the years, but do what works best for you, I'd say. And really try to just take the pressure off of your art in a way. and everybody can do it differently, but just don't beat yourself up. You're still a true artist if you need to supplement in our weird society. And it's tough to make music or money in music for sure, especially like losing songwriters' rights and payout for streams are going way down. Live shows, it's tough to make a lot of money from that anymore. So it's a tough industry, and same with arts in general. It's definitely something that is not for the faint of heart, and you have to have a lot of grit and perseverance to just keep at it over and over again. But yeah, don't beat yourself up for taking breaks or putting it down and then coming back to it when you're inspired again.
Oh, perfect advice. I love it. Lauren, you have been a top tier guest on my podcast. I love you so much. Let us know where we can find you online, where we can stream your album, and then anything else that you want to share with us.
Yeah, so you can stream the album. It's Logic Doesn't Sing by Lauren and the Homewreckers. It's on all the streaming platforms. It's on YouTube, it's Spotify, Bandcamp, Apple Music, like all of the regular platforms. It's out there. And really, it's funny that we're talking about this and having this episode now, because I am actually at a point where I am kind of taking a break from it. We're not having a lot of shows at the moment. I kind of got tired of playing the same set at the same venues. So I just kind of put the band on pause. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to try to write some new stuff. We'll restart again soon. So it's just kind of a recharge moment, but yeah. I feel very aligned and at peace with that. It's more of a self-care thing than a beating up thing. So that's new for me, but it feels really good. And actually having more control over creating that has been really powerful for me. So that's where you can find me, and that's what I'm up to currently. I'm just trying to get my shit together.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
Lauren, I am so proud of you. Your journey is so inspiring, and thank you so much for being on the Artist Emancipation. I think a lot of people are going to learn from you and listen to this and just be so inspired. So thank you so much. That is it for today, guys. We will be on next week with a new guest, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.